Coffee with Carl, and today's subject, domestic violence. In honor of Domestic Violence Month, I want to take some time with you, and I hope you can stay with this and spend some time with me thinking about why we need a whole month devoted to domestic violence awareness and prevention. That's right. Every year, October is a month in which we as a society and a community need to rally together to be educated and to be supportive and also to combat domestic violence. It is a scourge. It is an ongoing crisis. It is a problem that shows no end. Well, I could spend a long time talking about my experience as a litigator, and I could talk specifically about representing survivors and victims. I could also talk about the challenges of defending folks criminally who are charged with perpetrating domestic violence. The topic is vast, but it all comes down to three simple words, which I would like to leave with you at the end of this video. Stop the violence. Simple, it sounds easy, and yet in reality, the difficulty is with interpersonal relationships that everything is complicated. And the reason it's so complicated and challenging to stop the violence is because we as a society are now getting our minds around the idea that there's multiple forms of interpersonal violence. Of course, when a partner hits another person, and whether there's a bruise or not, when there's contact of that nature, that of course is domestic violence. But there is emotional violence, and there's also abusive power and control dynamics in many, many toxic relationships. And we as a culture and a society and as a country have yet to fully wrap our minds around that difficulty because for whatever reason, people choose to stay in unhappy relationships. And so the prevention work and the awareness work and the support work must start from the premise that each person has choices. And if they choose to stay in a difficult situation, it is not our job as outsiders, and certainly not as professionals, to judge. And then therefore, by judging, rule certain people out and say, well, you know what? She stayed with him, so she deserved it. Well, you know what? She was neglectful of the kids because she stayed with her abuser, thereby exposing the children again and again to her victimization. No. Number one, I'm an attorney and I'm client-centered. So if she, meaning a victim, meaning a mother, is my client, I'm going to really want to drill down onto the specifics before agreeing with CPS, for example, that those kids who may have witnessed their mother's victimization were inherently damaged and neglected or maltreated, because it doesn't necessarily follow from A to B. It's very, very fact specific. I would want to hear from the children's lawyer. I would want to hear from a forensic psychologist. And of course, I would want to hear from a CPS worker who may have been the first person on the scene after a hotline report was made about ongoing domestic violence. But I would not agree that those children are abused or maltreated without further proof, simply based on an allegation. And I would not agree with taking the children out of that situation because in New York, in a case called Nicholson versus Scopetta, well over 20 years ago, the New York Court of Appeals explained to us the child maltreatment law is a floor, not a ceiling. What does that mean? It means that the law is there to determine a baseline of minimally acceptable parenting. Minimally acceptable, not ideal parenting, but minimally acceptable parenting. This is very important for us to consider because as a lawyer and as someone who's very family supportive, I do not believe that the government has the power or has the right to come in and rip apart families, particularly poor families, minority families, uneducated or undereducated families, simply on an allegation of domestic violence. Why? Because let's strive for family integrity. Let's strive for family health. Let's strive for family healing and rehabilitation. Let's take that victim, which typically is the mother, doesn't have to be, and let's keep her with her children, put them in a family shelter. This is not rocket science. However, it takes money. And so here we are again in Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, because America is great at blowing things up. It's not as good at healing and at educating and providing the clinical services along with the legal services necessary for many families to be strengthened and healed and supported. What child wants to be raised by strangers? What child wants to be ripped apart from its parent and put in a foster home? Very few, very few. And that's a whole other topic, because today, for my little coffee break with you, while my coffee is still hot, I'm focusing in on domestic violence. Such an interesting topic. All right, so that's a little bit about what domestic violence encompasses, which, as I said, is more than physical punches. It's certainly more than stabbings and gunshots and shots fired and homicides and child fatalities, etc. It constitutes many different levels and layers. And we can prosecute it all we want, be that in criminal court or be that in family court or be that through a CPS investigation. But at the end of the day, we as a society need to be in the driver's seat. We should not give over the keys to the kingdom to the government to let some random CPS worker or some random bureaucrat supervising that CPS worker decide whether here's a family that has potential versus here's a family that we need to tear apart. Let's put mom over here in a domestic violence shelter. Let's put these kids in a foster home with strangers. And then let's terminate mom's parental rights. No, 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 no. So if you want to talk about it some more, I always tell potential clients the first consultation is 100% free of charge. Domestic Violence Month is every year in October, but let us hope that this October is the last month that we will ever need to do that. Let's put folks like Carl Berman out of business. Let's end domestic violence. Let's break the cycle. Let's focus on healing. Let's build up families. Let's support survivors. And let's start by stopping the violence. Hello. Keep it simple. Let's not make it so complicated. Thank you very much.